Hey there folks, and welcome to another episode of the Nintendo Wiretap, this time for October 4th, 2018. On tonight's episode, we're talking about a brand new rumor from the Wall Street Journal saying a brand new version of the Nintendo Switch is coming out in 2019. So without further ado, let's take a look. Now, one thing Nintendo has always been known for is coming out with many different versions of their consoles. We've seen this happen all the way back since the original NES, when they came out with the slimmer version with the dog bone controller. You know the one I'm talking about. They did the same thing with the Super NES, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS, Nintendo 3DS, etc, etc. You know where I'm going with this. So it's not a surprise whatsoever that a rumor is now circulating from the Wall Street Journal's very own Takeshi Mochizuki that an updated Nintendo Switch is in development right now, and it's coming out a lot sooner than you would think, in 2019. That's really close. So, what do we know so far about these rumors? Well, the short answer is not a lot whatsoever. There's no information whatsoever from these rumors about what we can expect to see from this Nintendo Switch. According to the report, apparently Nintendo's looking into what would be most cost-effective, so we might have some time before we know exactly what we're getting ourselves into here. But that's not going to stop us from speculating about what this could be. So, before we go any further, everything else past this point is not about the rumor, it's about what we at Nintendo Wire think we might see from an updated Nintendo Switch. So again, all of this is speculation only, but still, I think we have a few good ideas. So let's start at the easiest part, and that is a sleeker design. If Nintendo does indeed decide to update the Nintendo Switch, the easiest thing to expect would be a brand new design for this console. And as much as I love the Nintendo Switch, there's a lot of things Nintendo could do to make this more appealing. First and foremost, a bigger screen. There's a lot of bezels surrounding the Nintendo Switch's screen right now. If you trim down that bezel just a little bit, you can have a lot more screen real estate, and that's what I'm hoping Nintendo does here. They could really keep the same size of the Nintendo Switch and make the screen a lot bigger by trimming that bezel down. And while we're on the subject of the screen, let's talk resolution. If Nintendo is going to be making a bigger screen, it would make a lot more sense to add a 1080p display in this thing so that it would match the same resolution as the docked mode. Moving on from the screen, I would imagine that Nintendo would want to do something at least a little bit more stand-out-ish with the Joy-Con. Yes, I like the Joy-Con, but there's definitely room for improvement. There's been a lot of fan requests to add a D-pad to the Joy-Con, and personally, I don't think that's realistic. Nintendo loves the idea of being able to detach the Joy-Cons and have two separate controllers, and sadly, the D-pad really doesn't lend itself to that thought process. So maybe a redesign of what the buttons look like, something like a hybrid between a D-pad and circular buttons. Our very own Tom Brown did this mock-up. I think it's fantastic. This could be something that we might see on an updated Nintendo Switch. I know it's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea, but it might make the entire process more bearable for those who are looking for a dedicated D-pad from Nintendo. Next up, let's talk about what's under the hood, and this is going to be probably the most substantial thing from an updated Nintendo Switch. We've seen from Sony and from Microsoft that it is possible to sell people on a console that is slightly more powerful. The PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X do just that. An updated Nintendo Switch could add a little bit more horsepower and memory under the hood, making it a lot easier for developers to make some pretty amazing content. Now, like the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, I would imagine that Nintendo would have very strict guidelines that any game that would take advantage of this hardware would also work on the original Nintendo Switch as well. But who knows, maybe we'll see the occasional title that requires the updated hardware, very similar to what we saw with the new 3DS. Now, I'm not going to be as naive to say that this is going to support 4K gaming, but you never know. It might be something that Nintendo could squeeze into this thing. But personally, I'm guessing Nintendo is going to stick with 1080p on this thing. More storage would also be a major plus for this thing. The internal storage on the Nintendo Switch at this point, in my opinion, is comically small. Games are just getting bigger and bigger nowadays, so a bare minimum of 256 gigabytes would be preferable, even though I would love to see a lot more than that. But there you go, that's just some of our thoughts on what we might see from an updated Nintendo Switch. We have a lot more thoughts on this subject, and if you want to take a look, our very own Ben Frazzetti has written an incredible article detailing all of the hopes and dreams we have from an updated Nintendo Switch. You can find a link to that article in the description down below. But now I have to ask you, what do you think about this? What do you think about the prospect of an updated Switch just 2 years after the launch of the original? Let us know what you think in the comments down below, and let us know what you would like to see from updated Switch hardware. And that's going to wrap up tonight's episode of the Nintendo Wiretap, again for October 4th, 2018. Now, once again, we want to thank our amazing Patreon supporters for helping make our show a reality. If you want to help support this program, you can do so by clicking that link in the description down below, or heading to patreon.com/NintendoWire and supporting us there directly. That's it for tonight, guys. I'll see you soon with yet another episode. Stay wired in. Bye, guys.